Namaskar, respected elders, teachers, thought leaders, speakers in the panel, educational entrepreneurs. It's an honor to be here and just provide the nerve center of any activity. Ultimately, the end of all endeavors end up with economics, and education is not an exception to it. So the topic is on analyzing the financial framework of a self-financing education institution. Yeah. I start with this. It says, let's progress together. It is Rigveda. Both public and institutions. We have to leverage the strengths of both public as well as private institutions. I think both cannot work in isolation. So for a long-term sustainability of as a system of education, there should be a coordination. And of late, earlier it was the public good, now it is a private good in higher education. Particularly, I am focusing on the higher education. Next. This is the status. The private equity in higher education has proved beyond doubt. With this, which has supported in the GER with 58% in private institutions, 14.8 in private aided, 27.2 in government. I think this provides a picture of how the private sector is contributing for the GER. And further, it's of late, the customer, the student, we may call it as a customer, he expects value for the money that he has given to the institution. I think the time has come. It is quality, and quality in the sense that it is value for the money. Next. Again, to continue with it, I think as a lot of students go abroad, so the Tiwari ji was mentioning about it, the amount that has been kept, if a small percentage of is diverted towards the development of the private sector of education in India, I think it goes a long way in the contribution of the higher education. So what are the constraints? Why the philanthropy in education has failed over a period of time? The kind of contribution, donation used to get in the educational system, there is a sharp decline into it. The fact is, I think, over-regulation by the government itself. And particularly with reference to the greater role in financing the governance of it, there are two things. One is the fee regulation committee, and the other one is interference in the financial management. Just to quote an example of my system itself. In fact, I was doing, as a part of regulator in AICT, suspecting the institution, and now I am being suspected by the regulators because I am heading an institution. So I have seen both the side of the table as such. So I started realizing what is the level of interference that is happening here. Just to quote an example, in the fee regulation committee, which either a retired judge or a retired vice chancellor is a one-man committee chairman, who neither he is a venture capitalist, nor he is an entrepreneur, or nor he will not understand with all due respect to his credentials as an academician or a judge. He determines the fee structure of a university or institution in Karnataka, and the last year's determination of fee structure was 30% of variable cost is added to the total salary cost. This is the determination of the fee structure for the 45% of the seats which the government is allotting to the students, to the institution. That's how the private players in the schools, and the most important constraint is when a policy decision is being taken, no private players are there in the policy decision-making process. I think when invariably they are either the X of a public institutions or X of a government system or X of a political administrators. But nowhere the promoters or entrepreneurs are a part of it. And more so, in the developed world, it is 100% profit. We don't want the 100% profit institutions, but we don't want 100% trusteeship also. The time has come to sustainability. It is not just trusteeship. It is on the return, on the rate of return on the investment of in education sector as well. Next. So in fact, it's again the constraints comes to the rationale for cost sharing with investors. In fact, there are investors. It is not just the the entrepreneur. It is the total stakeholders of the private universities, wherein while framing the policy, we have to think about the mergers and acquisitions. The sick units in the public sector can be taken over by the private sectors, and the, the private sector looks for the commercially viable disciplines of study. Obviously, there should be revenue generation to the institutions. And more so, even if we opt for a commercially viable disciplines, we prefer certain non-popular programs to provide the cross-subsidy of the funding. And more so, the public-private partnership model of governance. In fact, when in the infrastructure projects it is successful, why not in the education sector? I think PPP model has to bring lot of transparency and also effective governance in the education institutions. And the last one is, it is a fact that the government is trying to meet its social obligations through the private sector funding from the private entrepreneurs. Next. So what are then continuing with the private participation, it is rationalization of fee structure based on the economics of the education. I think this is a very first. We don't have the experts who can understand the intricacies of educational cost and how to determine the fee structure for any institution or university. And in fact, I don't know about other states. In Karnataka, we call it as a social, education is under social sector, but whatever costs are there, electricity charges, water charges, everything is on the commercial rates. They are considered as a commercial entity. And now latest, we are under the purview of the Income Tax Act as well. And for the fixed costs, when the educational entrepreneur would like to invest in the education, he is charged on the commercial rates of interest. I think when it's burden on the private entrepreneurship, educational entrepreneurship, the cost is on a commercial inference, whereas when it comes to the fee structure, it is on a social obligations. Next. So complex issues in education. What are the economics of education that we can drive? It's determination of scientific fixed cost sharing in fees. What should be the fixed costs in proportionate to the fee structure? Application of the cost-benefit analysis. Very difficult to analyze the benefit, but in terms of the number of students turned out can be the cost-benefit analysis. And non-adoption of social cost-benefit analysis, I think this is very important. When the social cost is being considered in CSR activities in the corporates, why not in the education sector? And particularly in the government sector, it's government is pessimistic about assumptions about cost and returns and information that is being given, even though it is edited by the chartered accountants. And facility generation of income and cost recovery of the program levels. Next. Yeah, fee fixation. I think fee as I was talking about it, fee should be based on the total recovery cost, and should be allowed to have the cash reserves, and the fee should be based on the per student cost, which is very, not many of the state governments are making it based on the per student cost. And at times, it is right to go for a differential pricing. If you want the best, when you get the best quality of students, obviously you reduce your fees. And if you get an average student segment, then obviously it can be increased. So differential pricing can also help in supporting the fee fixation. Next. Institutional cost structure is based on the following facts. Very difficult to identify and bifurcate what are all the physical infrastructure cost, academic infrastructure cost, intellectual capital cost, and recurring cost. So there is no scientific approach on recovery of physical and academic infrastructure cost. And this is we lack the whole process of this delivery of determining the cost, so that the fee fixation is very difficult to ascertain. Next. The proposal. The whole exercise of this financial framework is to call for a national policy in private higher education. So there should be to provide level playing field across the states. Each state government has got one private university act, and has right from fee structure to the governance, I think everybody is having its good or bad about it. Even in the Karnataka, so the government nominee and the state government principal secretary, everybody comes, even they come into they evaluate our audit reports as well. So, whereas I'm told by in some other state governments in the private university, this is not there. No state government representative to be on the board of the university itself. So, there is a level playing field is not there. And secondly, provide a financial framework. As based on the cost that I have indicated in the previous slide, let us have a financial framework as a part of the policy itself, so that depending on the location of the institutions, whether in urban, semi-urban or rural, obviously the cost vary. So there should be a financial framework for it. To provide the funding pattern, and it is not just philanthropy or a entrepreneur investing in the funds in the institution, should be more on a nationalized funding pattern, even venture capitalists or CSR activities, 5% of the, now the latest is 2% of the turnover, all the companies have to put it for the CSR activities, and education is a part of the CSR activities. I think a lot of funds can come from the corporates for the development of the institutions also. And last but not least, it is to provide effective governance and management. Ultimately, the whole issue of economics comes with how effectively we govern the institution to have the optimum utilization of the resources. The last but not least, it is not the institution, it is creating the benchmarks of quality wherein the cost and the benefits relate to each other to bring the best of the students' output. Thank you very much.